So, how is this practically useful? For me, my understanding of crazy, how I interpreted and my experiences of things that I thought were crazy, me changing how I interacted with them and how I experienced them changed my life. I used to be a raging alcoholic. In no small part, it was because when I experienced something as crazy or going against what I believed to be true, I self medicated. I disconnected. I disconnected from people. If somebody challenged my belief, if they were crazy, I didn't connect with them anymore. Even if they were right, they were just crazy. I categorized them as crazy when I was the crazy one. The jobs that were crazy, the places that were crazy, the friends that were crazy. Most of those were, in fact, me labeling it that because they did not match in line with the world that I needed it to be, the story that I had written. It turned out that the story was kind of shitty, but I didn't know, because the systems by which I judged it, I did not understand. Instead of experiencing something as like, oh shit, Steve, you're doing something wrong, I experienced it as the other person or the situation being crazy. For a multitude of reasons, never for the right ones, or very rarely for the correct ones. So that's the point, is that much of what we experience as crazy is more of a signal that the world does not match up with how we believe it should be. And we need to understand it's not just about accepting that everything is hunky-dory as it is. That's not necessarily the case. It's that us viewing it through this lens and this singular perspective is not as useful as one might think. How is it crazy? Why is it crazy? What is crazy about it? Let's look at a few things. Relationships. Why are some relationships crazy? Are some people just crazy? Or women just crazy? Or men just crazy? One of the things that I feel is crazy is when people say men are this or women are that, as if it's that simple. Boys like toys. Boys like to cheat. Women like to cook and be with kids. These things are cultural understandings. Don't get me wrong. There are things that are natural to being human. What a lot of we apply are more story than actual nature. How we have relationships, how we should be with each other. Think of that. Think of what is a typical, how you describe uh, somebody you would want to be in a relationship with. Think of that for a second. It's typically that you want somebody who will love you for you, is going to accept you for you, not challenge you, be accepting and loving to you, almost in giving themselves up to you. Now, don't get me wrong, there's aspects of love that's true, but it's not calculating for yourself. What if you're not right? It's assuming you have all the right answers. That's not what real love is. Real love is challenge. Real love is meeting somebody and being better together than apart. And a lot of that is not just pure blind acceptance. It's not really a good answer. It doesn't really match reality. It's more narrative. And the reason being is because most of our lives and how we believe things should be is narrative, not truth. That's the problem. Because when we are judging something as being off from reality, being crazy, we assume that our reality, we give so much certainty to our interpretation of reality when we shouldn't. Why shouldn't we? Because we can't. We don't understand that. You do not see or experience any of your perceptions. None of them are a 100% direct reflection of reality. Really, that's one of the points about being with other people and social animals, is us sharing and communicating is how we determine what reality is with uncertainty. Because you can't do it on your own. We're social animals. Does that sound crazy to you? Well, you know why? Probably because the world that you're taught, the models that you have, is that we're on our own, that each of us have to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps to figure it out. That we're somehow a singular, crystalline entity that will just pop into existence through our bodies and our experiences. Those things are not entirely true. They're not untrue, but they're not entirely true. They're not the full story. They're a glossed over oversimplification that does not deal with the nuance that is us, but they govern us. And that's why it feels crazy when I talk about anything else other than that. Not because of reality, but because of what you have deemed reality, Are you starting to see where the problem is? It's that our collective problems are when our collective problems are really, in no small part, a magnification of our own internal inability to handle stuff. And then you add it at scale of millions and millions of people with decades of power and will and narrative and real deal industry and action at play. And you can't perform surgery on an open heart like that. It's not that easy. But being able to see it for yourself, well, that's something you can do. But you have to be willing to move past assuming something is crazy. If you cannot get past that hurdle, then you are part of the problem. You see it in comments online where somebody's making a point, another person is trying to destroy that point. And then they both try to destroy each other through words. And they both just look stupid. Most of us don't even watch or look, or we pass right past these conversations. There's thousands every minute, every day. What are those things? Those are people or believe they're using logic and rationale, but in reality, they're emotionally regulating because they do not understand that they're experiencing crazy, that this other person is crazy, that they're a threat, and that they need to prove that they're wrong in order to validate their idea, to make themselves feel better. Sounds kind of silly, like, oh yeah, I see it online, maybe I see it in conversations. That's great. You realize that's how this country is run. That is how and why people maintain power. That is why there's two parties. That is why the systems we have is because the complex ways in which they work, we look at in a very oversimplified, narrative-driven way, governed by fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and we're led by the nose. One group calling the other crazy, when both are crazy. Everybody's crazy. Why? Because no one is really, honestly, earnestly living 100% within the reality of our real world and the story of what's happening. We aren't. You know, a little side note here. I don't know if any of you believe that there's aliens out there. I'm pretty sure that there are. I don't know if they visited, but think of this. Have you ever heard of the Fermi paradox? It's explanations as to why aliens have not arrived on Earth if life is prevalent throughout the universe. It's interesting little story there, a little thought experiment. But think of it this way: as if you're an advanced civilization, you come down and you see that we have all of this technology. We can split the atom. We can do all these things. But quite literally, we are all living in our own little acted stories, like LARPing, but with real life and nukes and guns. No bullshit. I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that quite literally. Would you talk to them? Would you reach out? Because that's reality of what we're doing. We enact a fantasy. It exists because of our inaction. It exists because we make it so, not because it's true. We do that because when something is counter to what we believe to be true, we assume that it's the enemy. We feel that it's crazy. That's why people on the other side who are doing heinous, crazy shit, who say the craziest shit out of their mouths, are just as sane as you. Because they believe what they're saying is true. Because they don't know any better. Because they're creatures of active inference, embodied cognition, the extended mind, and their world tells them that this is true. When you watch an interview with a Russian citizen on the street and they have drones going overhead and they're saying, "Oh, I just don't look up and I ignore it," and all these things, you would think, how stupid is this person? How can they live in this world where they believe that their president of 25 years is not a dictator? It's the same that we miss our nuances. We think our people are crazy because we're creatures of active inference and certainty, and we're governed by not rationality, but how we handle what we think is crazy. Because we're creatures of narrative. And when that feels uncomfortable, it's because that's your system at play. Active inference. What I say goes against your nature, what you believe to be true, you experience it as a threat. Because that's the models that you've built. Because that's what society taught you. Because that's how we work. You don't just instantaneously pop out, and at 18 months, you're you. That's when your soul connects. It doesn't work that way. We are built, our models, our interpretations, everything that is you comes from your experience. And in this little tiny process, this little thing that you wouldn't even think of, that you don't pay any attention to, when you feel the discomfort of something is weird or crazy, is what governs you. That's what you choose. That's how you choose your media. That's how you choose your elected officials. That's how you choose what you eat, what you decide to read. Everything comes from how you handle the error signal, which is that feeling is something in line or out of line with what I believe to be true. And that's how we make ourselves. That's how we not only make ourselves, that's how we make our literal no bullshit world. That's how we form our friends, our family, our connections. That's how we shape our stories, our narratives. This is all interconnected through this one little bitty idea. Have you ever thought about it? Well, now's the time. Bit by bit, we're going to explore some of the aspects of our nature in ways that you have probably not ever thought of it. Not because of some secret knowledge, not because of anything other than these ideas as they exist are mostly purely academic when it comes to active inference, embodied cognition, and the extended mind, or wholly philosophical and beyond the average reach of most people. They're spoken of in language that might as well be foreign because it is so dense and specific, because it's for academia. You and I live in a world that runs outside of that ideas of academia, meaning the dense, complex language, the social structures, the needing to have a certain amount of studies in order to have any type of relevance. You and I can try to discuss about ideas of how we work and then experiment with them on our own in the real world and see. And then the way we actually determine if there's any truth in it is by sharing what you thought with each other, because we're social animals. That's not a gimmick. That's not a weird little fluke. You're not being weak. If you feel any of those things, that's because of the model of your understanding of the world that you have encoded. And that's what generates you. Not just your biology, not just your soul. You are made, and you can change yourself if you are present and capable of understanding that which you go through, like experiencing something as crazy. So experiencing what I'm saying is crazy. It can be crazy. It's okay. You don't have to take what I have to say and go, hey, that's great. That's amazing. I'm going to take it in. You want to know what's crazy? You want to apply crazy? You'll find out why you're crazy. This is how we're going to end it. If the other person is crazy and you need to destroy them for you to be safe, you need them to not exist. Right? That's what you're saying. When you dehumanize, when you say a Trump supporter is XYZ, when you say a Democrat is XYZ, when you say this other person can't exist, that they need to F off and die, that they need to do X, Y, and Z, think about it. Who's crazy? You're the one that believes that this thing cannot exist for you to be comfortable. Well, it's existing right now and you're comfortable. Don't get me wrong, there's real threats out there, but we're talking about the majority that aren't, that we govern ourselves from, that we create this false defense, spend energy and hate and anxiety in doing what? In maintaining the power of others that don't give a fuck about us, and suffering needlessly for no reason other than it's what we were taught to do. Literally, not figuratively, literally. That's the point. Now, if you're able to pause and realize that and experience that and understand that and not just experience that as crazy, you've opened up doors, literal doors. You can deal with the world differently. That's what I'm talking about. We are not just hardwired. We are hard learned. And we have to unlearn a lot of what we hold true. We have to not hold it true in order to experience the world differently. Otherwise, you'll experience it as crazy. Learning to accept what is versus trying to make something what you want It's real, it's true, it's powerful, it's scientific. It's in your power if you are willing to not identify it as crazy.